Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Powerblade. In the last part we started off the game, and now, as you can tell by the title, we're gonna go finish it off. This game's only 7 stages long, counting the final stage we unlock for beating Ultimate 6. Now, something I haven't really mentioned yet for this game is the music. This game's soundtrack is kick-ass. Not as much of it is as memorable as I'd like, admittedly, but what's here that is great stuff. And in researching this, I actually found a very interesting story. This game was composed by the same person who did a lot of the work on the first Castlevania. In the States, they were known as James Banana, a pun off of James Bernard, the composer for the 1958 Dracula film. Or as her name actually is, Kiruyo Yamashita. And she was actually all over my childhood researching her. She co-wrote Castlevania 1, Snatcher, Pocky and Rocky 2, the Super Nintendo Power Rangers game, the first one, the side-scrolling beat-em-up, not the second one onwards. She did a lot of the work on most of the Metarot or Metabots games from the early 90s to early 2000s alongside Iku Mizutani, but she herself also composed Parodius, this game and its sequel, Mega Man, the Wily Wars, and the arrangements of songs within that for the remixes. And she also did the same with Mega Man X3. She is all over the place, and she's done some great work. I know, I think I even mentioned this back in my Mega Man X3 LP, even, to talk about that game in particular. I wasn't a big fan of that game's soundtrack, but honestly, it's more so the instruments used rather than the melodies. I think the melodies are great, but the instruments are a bit samey. But then that's just because the sound font they used for X3, I don't think was the best. Though I've heard some people do some good stuff with it over the years. Now, this is probably the first stage that requires any amount of actual backtracking, at least with the order I'm taking. Because most of the stages that we've played up to this point, you just have to find the person and then head to the door. This one you need to backtrack to do so. And it's probably one of the most annoying if you find the exit first, because there's a long string of very deadly jumps you need to get through to get to it. I should note, in terms of the Iron Suit, by the way, every stage has 2 in it, and 1 life refill item. The max you can hold of any given item is 4, by the way, I believe, which is not very well demonstrated here in the US version, but in Powerblazer, the one thing I'll give it is that its bomb and health restoration items, they're displayed on the top left through bubbles, and there are 4 bubbles, and each one fills up when you gain one of the 4 items. So that's one UI thing I'll give the original game over this. A good thing as well about the Iron Suit is that its Power Wave ability hits on multiple frames, whereas the Boomerang I think just hits the once and it's done. I think the Power Blade does damage for every extended frame it's in. Or at least, it hurts for more frames than the main Boomerang ability. Now, my history with Power Blade is admittedly, like with a couple other games I've done more recently, relatively short. I first found out about this game when I saw someone stream a good portion, I forget who it was, back in like 2013 or 14, I want to say. And I'll be real, after that stream, I almost completely forgot about the game. Until I saw another streamer play the sequel all the way through, and I was like, hey, I think I remember the first one, and I did. The second game is a lot harder, by the way. This is probably one of the most difficult portions of the game here, because this is just a constant stream of bottomless pit, and even though I'm used to these due to certain Mega Man sequences, that doesn't mean I like them. I am constantly on edge, especially given something a little bit iffy with the jumps in this game, I suppose, is that if you just barely don't make it, you'll even clip a little bit into the platform, giving yourself a little bit of hope, and then you'll just fall right through it. I know in my practice playthrough that happened to me at least once or twice there. But no, we took care of that pretty easily this time. And now we're about to reach the boss of Sector 4, another one I'm having trouble remembering. I remember the stages and the bosses very differently in this game, in that I remember them individually and not as a package. Barring the final stage for obvious reasons. Let's see. Boss of Sector 4 was the... Oh, the Thunder God. This thing is a bit deceptive, because you might think the lightning in the background hurts, but no, that's just a background element. This thing will fly from top corner to top corner and throw a lightning bolt at you. That's it. Because it's very easily hittable, because it's always in a position where you can hit it, again, just mash and it will die. Honestly, given the genre this was for the NES, I'm surprised it's easy. It's as easy as it is. I'm not complaining, mind you, compared to some of the other brutally difficult games on the system like this. But I guess what it could be is that the Japanese version especially was maybe intended for a younger audience to begin with, if the cutesier art style was anything to go by. But at the same time, I can't help but wonder. Alright, this is probably my least favorite stage in the game, not because it's hard or anything, but because it has, without a doubt, probably the most boneheaded decision in its level design out of all the stages thus far. Well, I hesitate to say boneheaded now that I think about it, honestly, because what happens here is very of the era for its design mentality. It's just with historical context, it feels a bit boneheaded and tedious. Well, I'll get more into that in about a minute's time, I think. Because if you just look at this stage on a map, where the boss is compared to the start of the stage seems like a very straight shot, and that's because it is. But first, we gotta find the ID. Alright, to get the ID, we jump right here, and we climb that ladder on the top of the screen right now. However, you will quickly see why this is annoying. Because when we come up here, oh, hey, there's the boss door, and there's the ID. However, on the screen below us, we can't get from the little platform on the right back to the left to climb that platform to my left. To get back to this, you have to go all the way around the bottom of the ship that we're on to get back to the top left of the stage. And this is tedious to me. Now, since this is mostly new rooms, I'm still going to be showing it, but once we get back to the top of the ship that we've seen the past minute, I'm going to jump cut back to the point where we jump to the right to get to that ID card. Just because I already have to suffer through this, you shouldn't have to suffer it all with me in my eyes. Besides, it's not even like I'm cutting out that much at that point, because since it's a room we've already seen, that's maybe, I think it was like 30-something seconds. I will say this, though. This stage has easily one of the most well-defined, unique platforming gimmicks, I suppose, in that it has missile launchers on top of the ship that fire randomly out of 3 altitudes. They're surprisingly annoying to dodge, because the bullets come out pretty fast. I guess missiles, not bullets. Shells, maybe? I guess they're not really cannons, though. They're launchers. At least from what toys growing up taught me to believe. However, along the way, I'm going to make one brief pit stop down here on this ladder we skipped over last time because there's a power suit down here, and I'd rather get this before the boss than way before it, or right before the boss than way before it, and potentially lose it on the way around. And now we're going to be jump cutting over to this portion again. Yeah, to get to the boss, we just hit up this ladder. There's no way to get from the right back to the left unless there's some, like, TAS exclusive jump for all I know, which, given the NES era, is possible, admittedly. Alright, boss for this stage. Which one is this? Oh, this is another annoying one. This boss randomly teleports to anywhere on the background from my knowledge. It could be low, it could be high, it could be right next to you, it could be right, it could be on the opposite side of the stage from you. But when it pops in, it fires a spread shot in 5 directions that you can duck under the high ones if you're on the ground, and otherwise you can just worm your way between the rest of them. This is without a doubt the longest boss fight in the game too, just because you can only do so much damage in the time frame it's vulnerable, which is not very long. This is a boss I'd say if you can, I guess, try to take more of a Pyrrhic victory approach, where if you can have to take a hit or two, do it, because otherwise you're here for, I think, without a doubt, the longest time that a boss fight takes. Even the final boss, I think, is technically shorter than this one, depending on how you go about that fight. And there we go, that's stage 5 down. with that, we're heading on to the 6th main sector. And something I do like about the stage select screen, which by the way is much more detailed in this version compared to the original. On the Japanese version, you couldn't even see which stages you had cleared or not yet, like we can on the bottom of the stage select coming up. Something I do like is that they theme the map very well to what you're looking at, even though the themes don't matter too much. And for an advanced society like this, they are admittedly things you would probably see in a destination like that. One thing I like about this stage, though, is that the ID card is located relatively early in it. You just have to get to it and then get to the boss fight, and there's some annoying jumps along the way. To get to the ID card, you can head down any of these 3 ladders, and we need to go along the bottom of this sewer to get to her. I think this is the one that Linda's in. Or was that one of the earlier ones? I already forgot because past the first ID card, I haven't been reading the dialogue. You know, I brought up speed earlier, though. I had to wonder, what does the speed run look like for this game? Oh, this is the moment. This is Linda. I have no way of backing this up, but I do think each of the agents is based off of a different action star from the era. And I have no way of backing this up beyond names, by the way. For instance, Linda there. Given that this game came out in 91, Terminator 2 came out the same year, so Linda Hamilton. Okay, here we are. Speedruns for this game. 17 minutes, 20 seconds is world record set a month ago. Okay, this is being contested. I'm semi-surprised about that, but then again, this game was relatively popular here in the States, at least compared to the Japanese version in Japan. And even though it didn't take as much as maybe it does nowadays, in certain circumstances, an NES game getting a sequel, there are not many of those that got sequels. Usually they were either first party or the big second parties like Castlevania, Mega Man, so on and so forth. And Taito wasn't really into doing sequels that much now that I think about it, so, huh. Oh, I can see why it's 17 minutes already. There's glitches, because there's a glitchless category. Glitchless, it's 21 minutes, so... Alright, now this doesn't seem like it, but there was actually a 17-minute jump in the commentary just there because I actually went and watched the world record speedrun, and I think I understand what the big thing is. Obviously, movement optimizations and such are a thing, but I confirmed first off what I thought last part. The enemy drops are based off kill count. It's on a cycle of 64, and they're set. If you've got an upgrade already, it doesn't drop on the next cycle unless you've died in between then. As well, the biggest glitches looks to be actually involving the grenades. I never tried using them during a boss fight, but apparently they have a different effect during the boss fight normally, where they just do some damage or something along those lines. But if you use the grenade while you're entering the door, apparently that causes it to not do the right thing and it kills the boss in one shot. Whoops. I think there was also some minor clipping where they could get onto certain jumps they weren't supposed to, or maybe that's just me not playing as well. By the way, time for one of the bosses that's easily the most recognizable about what it may have been in the Japanese version. A Terminator. Or if you look at its face, Frankenstein, this thing jumps over you, and you're supposed to jump over it using the Yoku blocks from Mega Man, but it walks very slowly across, and beyond touch damage, it doesn't have an attack, so you can just spam fire at it, and it dies before it even makes it across the screen. Honestly, probably the easiest boss out of the 6. And with that, one stage left. And we also finally get a password.
Intruder alert. Peripheral security forces have been breached. Main defenses activated. Attention, intruder. You are instructed to cease current activity. Further action will prove fatal.
Oh no, scary AI alien bald man thing. That kind of reminds me of the one dude from Venture Brothers a little bit. The final stage is the most linear out of all of them. It is a straight shot from beginning to finish. However, there are no shortcuts you can take throughout it. If you look at a map, it looks like there might be, but no, the jumps are not makeable. This stage, what I'd recommend is taking your time, though. Especially if you're playing on normal, because you have 1,000 actual seconds. So you got plenty of time. The main reason I say that is because a lot of the enemies here are things we've seen before, of course, but if you're moving a bit too fast, you might get surprised by a few things, namely those blue faces that shoot out bubbles are in a couple places in this stage, and their bubbles are just hard to dodge, honestly. But given the kind of game this is, I'm surprised it doesn't have a boss rush. Mind you, the sequel has one, don't get me wrong, but this, I'm kind of surprised the first one doesn't, because boss rushes outside of Mega Man weren't entirely uncommon on the system or the Super Nintendo. Mega Man is just one of the only series that has kept it around over the past 20 years now, almost. God, 2000's almost 20 years old. Ugh. Oh, that's weird. In fact, now that I think about it, across the indie scene since like 2009, it's especially the retro-styled games that really keep boss rushes in. The only games besides that I can recall off the top of my head that aren't Mega Man that kept those in are the occasional RPG trying to do the usual recolor of a boss fight later on as a fight, Devil May Cry, and some other scattered ones for challenge mode stuff, which I guess is the best way to do it in certain regards. Also, there's no ID card to get here. We're just straight into the final boss against... God, that looks goofy. This thing phases in and out of existence like Dr. Wily did, and I think that was Mega Man 4. Whenever it appears, it just fires a projectile at you. If you time your jump right, you can jump right over it and fire a shot right back at the boss, taking you out relatively quickly. Something I know certain people do is, I think the shots only come out at certain trajectories, so if you stand at a certain point below the boss fight, you can just aim right up and shoot it without having to jump. In fact, the speedrun did that, but I'm not that good. But in an honestly surprising thing in an NES game like this, the boss actually does have multiple phases. Second phase is harder, I guess. It's this giant capsule thing, and you can only shoot it when the window on it is opened up, and you can shoot the core. This thing's main attacks are steam vents on the side that you have to either stay out of from the sides or just stay beneath, and fire that rains down that is very random and very hard to dodge. If you lose the power suit, don't worry, you can just take it out no problem all the same. And that's game!
Good job, Nova. Thanks to you, the threat is over. You will receive our highest commendation. Now we must rebuild, but this time we will be more careful and not surrender control to a machine.
Also, we don't get a credit sequence. Oh, that's Powerblade. It's good, but very average in certain regards for the era, I think. There's nothing outright awful about it. The music's great. I think the graphics are pretty good for the system. And the game plays fine, but it doesn't feel like there's anything really special to it, if that makes sense. It's almost bland, but not? And despite my misgivings about the sequel and its difficulty spike, I do think it is the better game between the two of them. With that said, though, if you want to play this, it's on the NES, and I think it never got a Virtual Console report. I do recommend playing this over Power Blazer, though, and that is just how it should be in this game's case. But with that, thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. Take care. And I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then.